10 Scariest True Stories That Happened at Night. The power went out at exactly midnight, and I was alone in the town library with 10 old tape recorders spread across the table. At first, I thought it was a storm. Then, in the dark, all 10 tape recorders clicked on by themselves. Each one played a different whisper, a different true story that had happened at night in our town. I heard a baby monitor catching a voice that was not a parent. I heard a hiker counting footsteps behind him that didn't belong to anyone. I heard a motel phone ringing in a room with no guests. I heard a window sliding open when no one touched it. 10 voices. 10 nights. 10 truths. The whispers braided together until they sounded like one voice that knew my name. Alex, it breathed, soft and close. They're happening again. Something cold moved the air right behind my neck. One of the recorders stopped. Then a second. One by one the red lights died, until only the last recorder glowed, the one marked with a label in neat, careful letters, 10 Scariest True Stories That Happened at Night. The tape inside spun faster and faster. It made a soft whir, like a long breath in. The door at the end of the hall began to open, inch by inch, though I could see no hand on the handle. I reached for my phone to call someone, anyone, and the flashlight popped on by itself, pointing straight at the open doorway. The beam showed the empty hall and the old portraits on the wall, and then the bulb flickered. On the last flicker, one of the portraits was no longer empty. A man I had never seen was standing inside the frame, looking at me like he had always lived there. He lifted one finger to his lips. "Don't make a sound." Before the light went out, I heard the last tape whisper, "You asked to hear them. Now you'll see them." The flashlight died, and something stepped across the threshold. Hours earlier, BF. Or midnight, it had been a normal evening. The library closed at 9, but I had stayed late because I was helping Miss Carter, our librarian, sort through boxes from the old town hall. We were making a small history corner for people who like to learn about the town. I like quiet places. I like neat rows of books. It felt safe. Miss Carter is kind and careful. She wears bright sneakers and always brings extra snacks for the kids who use the computers after school. She told me I could lock up when I was done, since she had to take her dog, Tucker, to the vet. In the last box, under yearbooks and faded maps, I found a stack of cassette tapes. They were labeled by hand. Each had a date, a place, and a short title. The handwriting was the same on all of them, neat and even, with tiny dots over the eyes. I pulled one at random. It said, "The Baby Monitor Voice." The date was from years ago, but I knew the street. It was 5 blocks from my house. I don't know why I did it, but I went to the old media shelf and rolled out the tape deck with the built-in speaker. It looked like something from a school in the 1980s. I plugged it in. I set the first tape. I told myself I'd listen for 10 seconds. Just 10. Then I'd put everything back. The tape crackled. A woman's voice said, "This is Sarah. It's 1:12 a.m. I'm recording because my baby monitor is picking up something strange." There was a soft hiss. Then, very faint, you could hear a second voice through the monitor. It wasn't scary at first. It just sounded like someone far away, saying, "Shoo," Sarah whispered, "My husband is asleep. The nursery door is closed." The hiss rose. The voice on the monitor said, clearer this time, "It's okay. I can see you." Sarah started to cry very softly. I paused the tape and told myself it was a prank from years ago. But my hands shook a little when I put it down. The second tape was Lab. Eiled, footsteps on the trail. The voice was a teenager. He said his name was Michael and he had gone for a late hike near the ridge because he couldn't sleep. "I keep hearing one more step then. I take," he said. "Like I'm not alone. When I stop, it stops. When I run, it runs." He counted out loud from 1 to 10. I heard his feet hit the gravel. I counted with him. 1, 2, 3, 4, then there was an extra tap. Not his. I paused it again. I almost stopped listening right there, but the third tape pulled my eyes. Empty motel wake-up call. The voice on this tape was a man who managed the old Sunset Motel by the highway. We got a call from room 14 asking for a wake-up at 3 a.m., he said. We don't do those anymore, but I wrote it down. When I checked the book, room 14 was not occupied. The line was dead when I tried to call back. At 2:59, the phone rang by itself and said, "Wake up," in a woman's voice. The manager paused. We tore that room down last summer. By the time I realized I was hooked, I had lined up 10 tapes across the table, like a row of small, careful soldiers. The labels made a list in my head without me trying. The baby monitor voice. Footsteps on the trail. Empty motel wake-up call. The window that opened itself. The swing that wouldn't stop. The bus stop shadow. The locked room TV. The lake that spoke back. The plastic chair on the roof. The library portrait that turns its head. That last one made my chest feel tight. I stood up and looked around the reading room. The portraits of the town founders hung in a long row. They had always creeped me out a little, but only in a normal way, like old pictures sometimes do. None of them ever moved. It was almost midnight. The air felt cooler. The building made tiny settling sounds, like a big animal sleeping. Outside, Main Street was quiet. A few streetlights made puddles of yellow light. I told myself I would listen to one more story, then turn off the lights and go home. I chose The Swing That Wouldn't Stop, because it sounded harmless. The tape clicked, and a child's voice came on. I am Amy, she said, and we went to the playground after my mom's night shift to see the stars. One swing was going all by itself. No wind. It went higher and higher, and my mom said, "Okay, someone is playing a trick." She grabbed the chain, and the seat was warm, like someone had just jumped off. But there was no one. I paused the tape again and rubbed my arms. The room felt colder than before. I told myself I was being silly, but I went to the front door and checked the lock. It was firm. I checked the side doors too. All locked. I walked past the portraits and tried not to stare at them. I told them, out loud, "Good night," because that made me laugh and the sound of my voice made the library feel normal again. When I came back to the table, I saw something that made my mouth go dry. The tapes were not in the order I left them. The one that had been last, the library portrait that turns its head, was now first. I hadn't moved it. I would have remembered. I swallowed and told myself the box had been tilted and they had slid. Even though they were not on a slope. Even though the labels still lined up straight, like someone had squared them with care. I put my palm on the last tape in the row, the one in the neat, careful handwriting that tied them all together. I noticed something new. On the side, in very tiny letters, the same neat hand had written a note: "If you listen to all 10 in one night, you will understand." I do not know why I read that note out loud. Maybe I wanted to hear a normal human sound in the room. Maybe I wanted to prove I wasn't scared. But when I said the words, the building hummed, like the air conditioner had kicked on. Only it hadn't. The power was steady. The lights didn't flicker. Not yet. I sat down. I pressed my hands on my knees. I told myself, I'll listen to one more, then I'll go. I chose The Lake That Spoke Back. The tape crackle. Edition. A woman began to tell the story of standing on the dock at midnight, whispering her worries to the water, and hearing, one by one, her words come back to her, but not in her own voice. As she reached the part where she said the lake whispered her name, I felt my phone buzz. A text from an unknown number glowed on the screen. I didn't want to look, but I did. It said, "Do not turn around." I froze. I didn't move. I told myself, it's a prank. It's a wrong number. I typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared like the sender was typing. They vanished. Then a second message arrived. "You said them all out loud. You invited them." Another buzz. A third message, "Start with the portrait." All at once, the power failed. The lights went black. The air went quiet. The tape deck died mid-word. In the dark, each of the 10 tape recorders on the table clicked on with a tiny, careful sound, as if 10 small, patient fingers had pressed them. Red lights glowed like eyes in a line. The library's far door creaked. The smell of old paper turned sweet and dusty, like the air in an attic. I could hear a frame on the wall shifting, as if someone inside it had put a hand on the glass. That I lifted my phone, my only light now, and the flashlight switched itself on without me touching the screen. The beam slid, slow and steady, across the row of portraits until it found the one in the middle, the man with the soft, serious mouth and the neat, careful handwriting in the plaque below. The light held on his painted face. I watched, not breathing, as his eyes moved, just a little, away from the painted book in his lap and down to the floor. To me, his lips opened. The glass did not fog. Paint does not breathe. But I heard him, right at my ear, with a voice that sounded like 10 whispers braided into one. Alex, number 1 begins now. The man in the portrait did not blink. His eyes held mine, frozen but alive, like something too old to remember how to pretend. My phone shook in my hand, and I wanted to throw it, but the light was the only thing keeping me from total dark. His painted lips stayed parted, but the sound I heard was not coming from the canvas. It was behind me now, circling the table with the 10 glowing red recorder lights. Number 1 begins now, he whispered again. A sharp slam echoed from the far corner of the library. One of the windows had burst open even though the latch had been locked minutes ago. The wind rushed in, carrying with it the smell of wet leaves and something faintly metallic. The tape labeled the window that opened itself clicked louder, as if it were the one telling this part of the story. That I spun toward the noise, the flashlight beam bouncing off shelves and tables, and that's when I saw it. The curtain by the window was blowing inward, though the air outside was still. The curtain swayed, but it wasn't random, it moved in and out like someone breathing under it. The shape beneath was tall and thin. The air grew colder with every sway. That I couldn't breathe. My hand tightened around my phone, my thumb slipping on the screen. I told myself I should run, that the side exit wasn't far, but my legs were led. I forced myself to take one step forward, then another. The shape under the curtain leaned closer to the open window. For a split second, I thought it might slip out and vanish. But instead, it turned. Slowly. Toward me. The curtain dropped flat to the floor. The shape was gone. Silence. That I swallowed hard, the taste of metal on my tongue. Then, from behind me, the tapes all clicked at once, like a dozen little fingers snapping. I whipped around, my light landing on the table. Every recorder now played the same word in different voices: run. I stumbled back. My foot caught the edge of a rug, and I almost fell. The window slammed shut by itself with such force that the glass rattled. The curtain sagged lifeless. My heart pounded in my ears. Trying to steady myself, I remembered how this started. How normal it had been just hours earlier. The sun had still been up when Miss Carter left me alone with the boxes. I had been calm then, almost bored. The room had felt safe and warm. The lamps buzzing quietly, the sound of pages shifting when the air conditioner pushed a breeze. Nothing about that evening had felt dangerous. That I replayed it in my mind, clinging to the safe parts. Me laughing when Miss Carter told me Tucker hated thunderstorms. Me unsealing the tape boxes and joking that they were ancient history. Me setting out the cassettes like little dominoes. Back then, I didn't feel eyes watching me. Back then, I didn't hear voices calling my name, but those safe moments felt farther away now, like they belonged to someone else's memory. That I tried to calm down, telling myself the recorders had to be old machines glitching. The window had to be a draft. I told myself again and again, but the words didn't land. My skin still prickled with cold. That I forced myself to gather the tapes. My fingers trembled as I stacked them back into the box. I reached for the last one, the one labeled the library portrait that turns its head. The cardboard sleeve slipped from my hand and slid across the table. I grabbed it quickly, not wanting it to fall. That's when I noticed the back of the case. There was another note. This one wasn't neat. The writing was rushed, jagged, as if someone had scratched it in while shaking. 4 words: do not stay here. My breath caught. At that exact moment, something heavy crashed from upstairs in the archives. The sound was so loud it shook the shelves, sending dust drifting through the beam of my phone's light. Someone, or something, was moving above me, and then I heard it, slow, dragging footsteps across the ceiling. They stopped directly over my head. The weight shifted. The old wood creaked, and before I could move, before I could breathe, the ceiling above me began to crack.